Did you know in 1942, Errol Flynn went to jail for a crime that is almost unbelievably hard to believe? But you know he was not the only one? Cary Grant, Fatty Arbuckle, and Barbara Payton also went to jail for crimes that will be considered gruesome in today's age. This is the story of when Hollywood's royalty became inmates, when fame couldn't buy freedom, when the cameras finally stopped lying. 1. Robert Mitchum. In September 1948, Robert Mitchum was one of Hollywood's hottest properties. Rugged, dangerous, magnetic, the kind of star who made women swoon and men want to be him. Then the LAPD kicked down a door in Laurel Canyon and found Mitchum at a marijuana party. The arrest sent shockwaves through the industry. Marijuana was the devil's weed, a career killer, a one-way ticket to obscurity. RKO Studios considered dropping him entirely. Mitchum was sentenced to 60 days at the Castaic Honor Farm, a minimum security prison where he picked lettuce and posed for newspaper photographers who turned his incarceration into entertainment. But something remarkable happened. Mitchum didn't apologize. He didn't grovel. He showed up at prison with a smirk and a shrug, treating the whole thing like an inconvenient vacation. When he emerged, his career didn't just survive, it exploded. He'd become more famous, more desirable, more Mitchum than ever. Years later, he'd joke about it in interviews, drawling, "It was like Palm Springs without the riffraff." Prison couldn't break him because he refused to be broken. He turned a scandal into mythology and proved that in Hollywood, sometimes even jail time can be spun into gold. 2. Mae West. Before Madonna, before Marilyn, there was Mae West, the woman who turned sexual innuendo into a career and made censors lose their minds. In 1925, she was starring in her own play, Sex, on Broadway. The title alone was provocative. The content was scandalous. New York, authorities arrested her for corrupting the morals of youth. She was sentenced to 10 days in the workhouse on Welfare Island, though she served 8 with good behavior. But Mae West didn't do jail like other people. She wore silk underwear beneath her prison uniform. She charmed the warden. She reportedly had her cell cleaned daily by other inmates who were thrilled to meet her. When reporters asked if she regretted anything, she purred, "I enjoyed every minute of it." She emerged from jail more famous than when she entered, and Hollywood came calling immediately. Her arrest hadn't destroyed her. It had proven she was exactly who she claimed to be: unbreakable, unashamed, and absolutely unstoppable. Mae West understood something fundamental about fame. Controversy is currency, and she spent it like a queen. 3. Lila Leeds. History remembers Robert Mitchum's marijuana bust. It barely remembers Lila Leeds, the young actress arrested alongside him that same night in 1948. She was 21 years old, beautiful, and on the verge of stardom. She'd appeared in several films and seemed destined for leading roles. Then came the raid. Unlike Mitchum, Leeds couldn't turn infamy into mythology. She received the same 60-day sentence, but while Mitchum's career soared, hers evaporated. Hollywood's double standard was crystal clear. A male star could be redeemed. A young woman was damaged goods. After prison, Leeds found herself blacklisted. The roles dried up. The calls stopped coming. She made a few B-movies with titles like Wild Weed, exploitation films about the very thing that had destroyed her career. By the 1950s, she'd left Hollywood entirely, working ordinary jobs and living in obscurity. Lila Leeds' story is the one Hollywood doesn't like to tell, how the same scandal that made a man a legend made a woman disappear. Prison wasn't her punishment. Erasure was. 4. Paul Kelly. In 1927, Paul Kelly was a successful stage and screen actor with everything ahead of him. He was also having an affair with Dorothy Mackay, the wife of his close friend, Ray Raymond. When Raymond confronted them, a fight erupted. Kelly beat him so severely that Raymond died 2 days later. Kelly and Mackay were both convicted of manslaughter. He served 25 months at San Quentin, one of America's most notorious prisons. Inside those walls, Kelly wasn't a star, he was prisoner, #31SX4, surrounded by murderers, thieves, and men with nothing to lose. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. After his release, Kelly returned to Hollywood and actually rebuilt his career. He married Dorothy Mackay, the woman for whom he'd killed, and they remained together until her death. He worked steadily throughout the 1930 and 1940, appearing in dozens of films, though he never regained leading man status. Kelly once said in an interview, "I paid my debt to society, but I'll pay another debt every day for the rest of my life." He died in 1956, a working actor who'd murdered his best friend and somehow kept acting anyway. Hollywood forgave him. Whether he forgave himself is another question. 5. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer's story isn't just about jail. It's about a system that punished women for being difficult, for being brilliant, for refusing to smile and obey. Throughout the 1940s, Farmer was arrested multiple times for drunk driving, disorderly conduct, and assault. Each arrest was more humiliating than the last, with newspapers gleefully documenting her downward spiral. But the real horror wasn't jail, it was what came after. Farmer was committed to psychiatric institutions where she was brutalized, possibly lobotomized, and treated like an animal for years. Her mother had her declared mentally incompetent, and Hollywood abandoned her entirely. When she emerged from institutions in the 1950s, she was a ghost of her former self. She worked as a hotel clerk, a secretary, invisible jobs for an invisible woman. She attempted a comeback in the 1960s, even hosting a television show, but the spark was gone. Frances Farmer's crime was being a woman who wouldn't break, so they broke her anyway, using jails and asylums as weapons. Her arrest record was just the beginning of a torture that lasted decades. 6. Stompanato and Turner. This isn't about Lana Turner going to jail. It's about the night in 1958 when her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed Lana's abusive boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, to death in their Beverly Hills home. The scandal was nuclear. Cheryl was arrested, questioned, and held in juvenile detention while the world watched. The trial revealed years of abuse, Stompanato's violence, his threats, his control over Lana. Cheryl claimed she'd acted to protect her mother. The jury ruled it justifiable homicide, and Cheryl was released. But the damage was permanent. Cheryl spent time in institutions trying to process what she'd done. Lana's career never fully recovered from the scandal, and Hollywood learned a dark lesson. Even when the victim is a child, the spectacle matters more than the truth. Cheryl Crane would spend the rest of her life living with what happened that night. The screams, the blood, the moment a teenage girl had to become a killer to survive. 7. Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was one of the biggest stars of the silent era, literally and figuratively. In 1921, he was arrested and charged with the rape and manslaughter of actress Virginia Rupp, who died after attending one of his parties. The trial became a media circus, with newspapers inventing lurid details and destroying Arbuckle's reputation before he ever stood before a jury. Arbuckle spent months in jail awaiting trial. He endured 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries. The third acquitted him completely, with the jury even issuing an apology stating, "Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done him." But it didn't matter. His career was finished. Hollywood banned his films. His name became synonymous with scandal. He died in 1933, broken and forgotten, despite being innocent. Fatty Arbuckle's time in jail didn't destroy him. The court of public opinion did. His story remains one of Hollywood's greatest tragedies, proof that sometimes the truth doesn't matter when the lie is more entertaining. 8. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin never served significant jail time in America, but he came dangerously close. In 1944, He was charged under the Mann Act with transporting a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. Essentially, the government's attempt to punish his affair with actress Joan Barry. Though he was acquitted of the criminal charges, he was found liable in a paternity suit, despite blood tests proving he wasn't the father. The legal battles devastated Chaplin's reputation in America. The FBI had a massive file on him. The government wanted him gone. In 1852, while sailing to London for a film premiere, his re-entry permit was revoked. He was essentially exiled from the country he'd helped build into a film capital. Chaplin chose not to return, settling in Switzerland with his wife Una. He didn't come back to America until 1972 to accept an honorary Oscar. By then, he was an old man, 83 years old, receiving a standing ovation from an industry that had once tried to imprison him. Chaplin's story shows that sometimes the threat of jail is enough. Sometimes exile is the sentence. 9. Errol Flynn. In 1942, Errol Flynn was arrested and charged with statutory rape of 2 teenage girls. The trial became the biggest scandal in Hollywood history at that point, with newspapers documenting every salacious detail. Flynn spent time in jail awaiting trial, and the evidence looked damning. But Flynn had something many defendants didn't: money, fame, and the best lawyers in Los Angeles. The trial revealed questionable testimony and possible frame-ups. The jury acquitted him on all counts, and a new phrase entered American slang: in like Flynn, meaning to succeed effortlessly, particularly with women. Whether Flynn was innocent or simply wealthy enough to escape justice remains debated. What's certain is that his time in jail and courtroom didn't destroy him. It enhanced his image as Hollywood's ultimate bad boy. He continued making films, drinking heavily, and living recklessly until his death in 1959 at age 50. Flynn proved that in Hollywood's golden age, charm could be more powerful than truth, and acquittal more valuable than innocence. 10. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton, the great stone face of silent cinema, spent time in jail in the 1930 and 1940 for salutable 700 buys, drunk driving, and public intoxication. Once one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, Keaton had been destroyed by the transition to talkies, a disastrous MGM contract, and alcoholism that consumed his life. His arrests were humiliating, this icon of cinema being photographed in handcuffs, his face still expressionless, even in degradation. He served short sentences in county jail, where guards recognized him and other inmates whispered about the famous comedian in their midst. But unlike many fallen stars, Keaton eventually found redemption. He stopped drinking, rebuilt his career through television and smaller film roles, and lived to see his genius recognized again before his death in 1966. His autobiography treated his jail time matter-of-factly, without self-pity. I drank too much. I paid the price. I moved on. Keaton's story offers something rare in these narratives: hope, proof that rock bottom doesn't have to be the end. 11. Sophia Tucker. Sophia Tucker, the legendary vaudeville and cabaret star, was arrested multiple times throughout her career, usually for performing material considered too risque for public consumption. In an era when even suggesting sexuality on stage could mean jail time, Tucker built her career on innuendo and bold humor. Her arrests were usually brief overnight stays, fines, releases with warnings she inevitably ignored. Tucker understood that being too hot for jail made excellent publicity. She'd emerge from police stations with photographers waiting, winking, and promising to be a good girl, while knowing full well she'd be arrested again within months. Tucker turned her brushes with the law into part of her act, joking on stage about her vacations in city jails. She was never broken by the system because she refused to recognize its authority over her art. She performed until she was nearly 80 years old, outlasting every censor and cop who ever tried to silence her. Sophie Tucker proved that sometimes the best revenge against oppression is longevity. simply refusing to stop. 12. Alma Rubens. Alma Rubens was one of the biggest stars of the silent era, beautiful, talented, and tragically addicted to morphine. Throughout the 1920s, she was arrested multiple times for narcotics possession. Each arrest meant jail time, rehabilitation promises, and inevitable relapse. She spent months in various jails and institutions, trying desperately to break free from addiction. Newspapers documented her decline, with cruel fascination, the fallen star, the beauty destroyed by drugs. Studios dropped her, friends disappeared. She made attempts at comebacks that always ended in another arrest, another cell. Rubens died in 1931 at age 33, her body destroyed by years of addiction and the primitive treatments of the era. Her final years had been spent cycling between jail cells and hospital beds, a cautionary tale Hollywood used to terrify other stars into compliance. Alma Rubens's tragedy is that jail never helped her. It only added humiliation to illness. She needed medical care and compassion. She got bars and judgment. 13. Carlton Young. Actor Carlton Young, not to be confused with Gig Young, was involved in one of Hollywood's darker incidents. In 1951, he was arrested and briefly jailed in connection with a violent assault case. While he wasn't ultimately convicted of major charges, the scandal damaged his career and reputation. What made Young's case particularly disturbing was how it revealed the violence simmering beneath Hollywood's polished surface men, who played heroes on screen but could barely control their rage off-screen. The industry tried to bury the story, moving on quickly to the next scandal, but those who remembered spoke of a man whose temper made him dangerous. Young continued acting in smaller roles through the 1950s and 1960s, but he never regained prominence. His time in jail, brief as it was, marked him as untrustworthy in an industry that demanded discretion above all else. 14. June Marlowe. June Marlowe had a brief but notable career in silent films, appearing in comedies and dramas throughout the 1920s. In 1928, she was arrested and spent time in jail for check fraud, writing bad checks to support herself as her career declined. The arrest humiliated her. Newspapers that had once praised her beauty now ran mugshots. The studios that had employed her wanted nothing to do with a thief, regardless of the reasons. Marlowe served her sentence quietly, then disappeared from Hollywood entirely. She resurfaced decades later, living under a different name, working ordinary jobs. When film historians tracked her down in the 1980s, she refused to discuss her Hollywood years. "That was another person," she said. "Another life." June Marlowe's story illustrates how quickly Hollywood could dispose of people, from film star to prisoner to ghost, all in the space of a few years. 15. Gail Russell. Gail Russell was breathtakingly beautiful and deeply troubled. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, she was arrested multiple times for drunk driving and public intoxication. Each arrest meant jail time, sometimes just overnight, sometimes longer. Russell suffered from severe anxiety and alcoholism, conditions Hollywood exploited rather than treated. Studios gave her pills to perform, then blamed her when she became dependent. When her arrests started making headlines, they dropped her contracts and moved on. She died in 1961 at age 36, alone in her apartment, surrounded by empty bottles. Her death was ruled as heart failure caused by alcoholism. The police who found her noted that her last possession of value was a tarnished trophy from her acting days, a reminder of what she'd been before jail, addiction, and abandonment consumed her. Gail Russell's repeated incarcerations never addressed her real problem. Jail became another place where Hollywood failed her. 16. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's descent was one of Hollywood's most documented and cruel. In the early 1950s, she was arrested multiple times for drunk driving, for prostitution, for disorderly conduct. Each arrest meant jail time and each jail stay meant fewer chances of returning to Hollywood. Peyton had been a promising actress with contracts and magazine covers, but her personal life affairs, scandals, addiction, destroyed her career by her mid-20s. As work disappeared, she turned to sex work to survive, and the arrests piled up. Her autobiography, published shortly before her death in 1967 at age 39, was devastatingly honest. "I was the beautiful blonde. That's all I was ever allowed to be." She died broke, alcoholic, and forgotten, except as a cautionary tale about what happens when Hollywood decides you're disposable. Barbara. Peyton's time in jail was just one symptom of an industry that used people up and threw them away. 17. William Desmond Taylor. Director William Desmond Taylor wasn't arrested. He was murdered in 1922, shot in his home in one of Hollywood's most famous unsolved cases. But his death sent shockwaves that led to multiple arrests, jail time for associates, and destroyed several careers. The investigation revealed a tangled web of Hollywood secrets: drug use, illicit affairs, financial crimes. Several people connected to Taylor spent time in jail during the investigation, though none was ever convicted of his murder. Actress Mary Miles Minter's career ended due to the scandal. Comedian Mabel Normand's reputation never recovered. The Taylor murder became Hollywood's original sin, the moment when America realized the film industry was built on lies, vice, and violence. Studios responded by creating the Hays Code and increasing censorship, but the damage was done. Taylor's unsolved murder proved that sometimes in Hollywood, being the victim can destroy more lives than being the criminal. 18. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake, famous for her peekaboo hairstyle and film noir classics, spent time in jail in the 1950 and 1960 for public intoxication and disorderly conduct. Once one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars, she'd fallen into alcoholism and poverty. Her arrests were front-page news, not because people cared about her well-being, but because they enjoyed watching the mighty fall. Photographers captured her being led into police stations, her famous hair now disheveled, her face marked by years of drinking. Lake died in 1973 at age 50, largely forgotten. Her obituaries focused more on her hairstyle than her talent, more on her arrests than her achievements. She'd spent her final years working as a bartender, an ironic occupation for someone who'd been arrested so many times for drinking. Veronica Lake's time in jail symbolized Hollywood's cruelty, how the industry celebrates you at your peak and ridicules you at your lowest. 19. John Gilbert. John Gilbert was one of the biggest stars of the silent era, the great romantic leading man. In the late 1920 and early 1930, as his career crumbled with the advent of talkies, he was arrested multiple times for drunk and disorderly conduct, spending nights in jail that newspapers eagerly reported. The arrests were symptoms of deeper problems. Gilbert had gone from the highest-paid actor in Hollywood to unemployment in less than 5 years. His voice, contrary to Hollywood legend, was fine, but Louis B. Mayer allegedly had sabotaged him over personal feuds. Gilbert turned to alcohol, which led to arrests, which destroyed what remained of his reputation. He died in 1936 at age 38 of a heart attack, though friends said it was really a broken heart. His time in jail had been brief, but his destruction was complete. John Gilbert's story shows how Hollywood could turn on its own, using jail as just one more weapon to finish careers they'd decided to end. Closing. The jail cells are empty now. The stars who occupied them have long since turned to dust. Their films remain beautiful lies flickering in the dark, showing us gods and goddesses who never stumbled, never fell, never wore handcuffs or prison gray. But the truth is more compelling than the fantasy. These weren't gods. They were human, fallible, broken, struggling against systems designed to consume them. Some survived their time behind bars. Others never escaped, even after the cell doors opened. Hollywood's golden age was built on secrets, and jail time was the ultimate secret the studios fought to conceal. When they couldn't hide it, they spun it, turning bad boys into legends and bad girls into warnings. The cameras have moved on, the studios have transformed, but the pattern continues, dressed in modern clothing. Fame still demands too much, success still costs too much, and somewhere, always, another star is learning what their predecessors knew. In Hollywood, nobody is above the law. They're just rich enough to choose which laws to break.